Let's cross over now to my colleague Griselda Lewis, who has been covering the Senzo Meyiwa murder case, where the 5 accused are sitting in court today. Over to you, Griselda. What's happened so far?
Well, Nompu, you would recall that we were due to be back in this court this morning so that Advocate Malesela Teffo can argue on the jurisdiction issue. Remember, he has contended that this particular court, the Pretoria High Court, is not the right court to try this particular matter. He basically argued that, of course, the crime had taken place in Vosloorus and that, this court was not the one to hear this matter. Instead, the South Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg, according to him, would have been the correct court to try this particular matter. So when we returned to court this morning, we'd already known that the issue on the argument of jurisdiction was not going to go ahead. And in the run-up to this particular sitting here today, we do understand that the state had also received a number of correspondence from Advocate Malesela Teffo, and that the issue of jurisdiction had now been thrown out the window. And essentially what Advocate Malesela Teffo wanted was for his clients accused number 1 to 4 for the charges against them to be dropped. He'd essentially written to the National Director of Public Prosecutions and basically says that there is no basis for his clients to be facing these charges, and also claims that they'd been forced into confessions under duress and that some of his clients had already been incarcerated on other matters, so they could possibly not have been involved in the murder of Senzo Meyiwa. Much to the disappointment of the presiding judge, Teffo, who basically accused Advocate Malesela Teffo of wanting to waste the court's time and basically direct the way that the court should be doing its work. Let's take a listen to part of that exchange.
Give me an explanation about whether I'm still to receive heads or whether I am to go over that process, because on my side, I'm waiting for heads and they are not here.
All right, not quite part of the exchange in that particular clip. However, what we also heard inside court is that Advocate Malesela Teffo had basically written to the National Director of Public Prosecutions on the points part of what I had mentioned, Nompo, where he basically says that his clients had been forced into this confession and that basically, some of them had been incarcerated at the time that the murder had taken place. What we do know at this particular stage is that the National Director of Public Prosecutions has not made a decision on that particular matter. Let's take a listen.
There is a latest development. On the 29th of June, I met my learned colleague, Advocate Baloy. We have a discussion at his office here in Pretoria. And our discussion was very fruitful. That later came up with a new development whereby accused 1 to 4, to 4 years. We then submitted application or representations in terms of the provisions of Section 6B of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977 to the NDPP. And I also sent it, I copied the court, I copied Mshololo, I copied the state, and then I also got acknowledged of receipt by the state. And we also discussed last week the latest development. I was told that Section 6B is getting attention. And even this morning, I was also updated that Section 6 is getting attention.
So Advocate George Baloy, who is the state prosecutor, also baffled by the certain U-turn that was made by the legal representation for accused number 1 to 4, Advocate Malesela Teffo, in that he said he was under the impression that the arguments that will be taking place inside this court today will be based on this application regarding jurisdiction, and that he had also then at a later stage heard that the defense had basically been abandoning that and instead they would want to argue on the basis of these charges being dropped against accused number 1 to 4. Let's take a listen.
The defense has since abandoned the issue of jurisdiction and has resolved to bring an application in terms of Section 6B of the Criminal Procedure Act.
Well, Nompu, just lastly, also now, it seems there is a letter that has also surfaced inside this court. This is believed to be a letter from accused number 3 in which he alleges that he's being ill-treated at Kgosi Mampuru prison, which is here in Pretoria. Advocate Malesela, who represents him amongst the other 4, basically says that his client was kidnapped from the Johannesburg prison and taken to Kgosi Mampuru. And it seems this letter may want to point to him complaining, this is accused number 3, of not being treated fairly, and basically says that for majority of the day, he is in solitary confinement at Kgosi Mampuru prison. We're likely to hear just shortly after 2 o'clock. Proceedings had been adjourned just about an hour ago after there being a to and fro about whether this letter should be read inside court. Advocate Zandile Mshololo, who's also representing accused number 5, basically said they don't know anything about this letter. Advocate George Baloy, who is the state prosecutor, also indicating they're hearing for the first time about this letter, which alleges that accused number 3 is being ill-treated. And essentially what we got to now is that the judge basically saying that all these parties should come together between now and 2 o'clock when we will resume. We do understand that the state and the defense and others concerned in this matter will be contacting the Kgosi Mampuru prison to ascertain exactly where these allegations may be emanating from. But let's take a listen to Advocate Malesela Teffo when he raised this issue pertaining to this letter inside court.
Accused number 3, he's got the letter. That I also humbly request that my learned interpreter may read that letter to the court. It's in relation to the condition that has been subjected to at the Kgosi Mampuru prison.
So, Nompu, a sharp focus at 2 o'clock expected to be on this letter and exactly what the officials at the Kgosi Mampuru prison will say about these allegations. I do understand that part of that letter complains about the accused not being able to have access to a working telephone, even to be able to, consult with his legal representation. So much of that detail we're expecting at 2 o'clock about what is contained in this particular letter and whether at all it will be read inside this court shortly after the proceedings resume at 2 o'clock.
Thanks very much, my colleague there, Griselda.